Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, guys, this is a continuation of the previous upload, the brown dwarf star that was picked up by the SETI satellite Stereo H1 from NASA. This is part two of it. Wayne Steig is just doing an in-depth analysis on what was found. So let's begin.
Satellite feed that you can get for yourself, and I'll leave you a link. So let's take a look, folks. So we began to see this. The date on this one is 11/16. This is 0409.
Okay, guys, I'll leave the link that Wayne's alluded towards in the description box for any one of you who want to check this for themselves.
Now I'll just go ahead and start going through these, and you'll start seeing. This is 0609. This is 1649, and these are in different filters of light. 1609, 1929, 2129, 2209, 0529, 1116, 1116, 1009. Folks, this is real. It's not an aberration of the camera. It's not a malfunction of the camera. There's nothing wrong here. The camera is picking up exactly what it is seeing. These are in the different wave bands. You can go directly to the SETI website and go through each one of these yourselves. What disturbs me about this particularly is that in this particular light filter, folks, this is mass. This is what we call negative and positive charged particle ions. This is the sun, and you can see this is big. It's very, very big. We're going to see this here. This is heat, and you're going to see that what I'm talking about. This is 1049. Now, as we go forward, I'm going to be pointing out some rather remarkable elements. Again, look at this. It's massive. It's huge. This is Venus. So it begins to tell you our sun's reacting. These are shots, folks, where the particles overwhelming the sensors. It's absolutely going. I'll show you in one of these. Look at this. Now this is in negative light. Folks, there's something here that this is covering. Look at this. Now, if you're trying to say, well, that's our sun, folks, you don't know really what you're talking about. You do not. This is looking out the outer solar system. Look at this. Amazing. It's solid. You know you can have a gaseous state that's in both states, right? You do realize that. Okay, just so that you understand. It's just remarkable. So I'm sure the question that you're asking, well, what is it? Well, if this is the destroyer, I understand what the Egyptians now wrote about. I understand now why people soiled themselves.
It's possibly alluding towards the binaries. Well, it's a hypothesis, and I'm just putting it out there, and it's quite possible, simply because we've been looking at a timeline, historical timeline, and historical events. And when I say historical events, I mean um, of biblical proportions. For instance, um, the extinction of the Jurassic period, or the Ice Age, or the floods of Noah alayhi salam, or um, the events that led up, sorry, or the um, drought in the time of Yusuf alayhi salam, the 7 years, or the um, events that led up to the final exodus of Bani Israel with Musa alayhi salam, and the um, the plagues, the water parting, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Um, these events and other events documented world over seem to point towards this binary system and all its celestial bodies that have come, that have merged with our solar system, um, being the asbab for and the means through which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought about uh, destruction of past nations. This includes Qawm Ad in terms of the wind, the ferocious wind, um, and even Qawm Lu possibly, because I understand it was clear fireballs which could very possibly be um, comets um, falling into our atmosphere, which certainly it seems the red dwarf star, the one being alluded to towards in this particular segment, seems to carry a huge amount of comet debris and asteroids with it. Now, if we were to just go past its comet tail, or through it even, uh, the face of the planet would be basically struck everywhere, all over the surface, with these meteorites, these asteroids, these comets. So it seems that it's got a binary relationship with our solar system, and it comes from below our elliptical plane on an ecliptic, and um, um, and then goes up, sharing its barycenter with our sun, and back down again, and comes back whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has will for it to return again. And it seems, depending on where we are in terms of our proximity to this particular system when it's in its trajectory out, that dictates the extremity of the disasters that we experience here on Earth during that period. Pretty much like the Russian roulette, right? Um, where it depends on where the ball lands. Well, think of that little white ball when the wheel is spinning as Earth, right? And depending on where this system is as it's going out, and depending on where Earth is in relation to it, the further away the better. And it seems, inshallah ta'ala, that we will be. If indeed this is going to be the asbab through which we experience the three great landslides, the one in the west, in the east, and the Arabian Peninsula that the Prophet ﷺ has prophesied about. If this system has indeed come into our solar system, has indeed merged with our solar system, and is indeed possibly the means through which these comes into fruition. And what we understand is the events in relation to, I guess, the Great Floods, or other past events let's say possibly the extinction of the Jurassic period, or the Great Deluge, which is the floods of Nuh alayhi salam, uh, where all of humanity as we understand it, um, uh, bar a few selected individuals, including Prophet Nuh alayhi salam himself, and those that followed him, was saved. And then you've got, and then the earth was repopulated again, alhamdulillah, subhanallah. And you've got then the examples of the Ice Age as well, which seem to have preceded the 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 window, the time frame when humanity, when Adam alayhi salam had fallen, um, well, had been sent down rather by Allah subhanahu wa taala, by God, from heaven down to earth, along with Hawa, Eve alayhi salam, and Shaitan lanatullahi alayhi, right, who was expelled and disgraced. So it seems that there's a certain, at least the time of jinn, and then other prehistoric vertebrae and mammals and all sorts of creatures used to roam the surface of the planet. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, according to certain periods and times, dealt with creation according to His will subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this seems to be the same system being referred to, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. There seems to be a pattern there, and it's I see it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala certainly knows best. But I mean, it seems quite a reasonable possibility.
This is big, folks. Really, really big. Now, our sun is reacting. This is coming off of our sun. And what makes it remarkable is that this object is remaining behind the charged particles coming off our sun. Look at that. And this is Venus. It's massive, folks.
Now, what he's referring to when he says it's massive is a binary star, and not a Najm al-Thaqib. A Najm al-Thaqib, I understand, is much closer to the sun, and this is the dwarf star, which is binary to a Najm al-Thaqib, the primary star, which has a very similar light to what we see right now. This isn't its light, by the way, because he's looking at this particular apparition in different spectrums. But the light is very similar to this way. It's a really bright white light with a blue haze around it. Although this is not that star, nor is it its light. This is basically looking at the reaction taking place and captured by the satellite stereo H1 in a different spectrum of light. But this particular dwarf star, brown dwarf star, is a burnt out star, although very condensed, having maybe a substantial amount of magnetic and gravitational influence of its own, which also orbits the other proton-neutron star, which is An-Najm al-Thaqib, as I understand it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again knows best.
Look at that. This disturbs me. I don't really know what that is, but it's visible. In every light wave, this is not an aberration again. Look at that, folks. This is a light source. I don't know if this is blocking it. I don't know if this is the brown dwarf itself. If it is, it's huge. It's as big as our sun, if not bigger. It's huge. Again, as you can see, it is just, this is the one that really gets me. If this is a body, this is a star, then this could very well be a very large planet. I don't know. I'm just giving you my personal interpretation. And what disturbs me about this one particularly, I told you, crapola, is that this is interstellar space. We see this star field all the time, and I'm going to show you the videos. This is out and impacting the outer regions out here. And then look at this. I don't know what it is, but it's in our solar system. That's the only thing I can come to the conclusion. I'll show a couple of videos that you can see. It's big, folks. It's big, and if it's where I believe this is, as Steve and I talked earlier, the next couple of months are going to get real interesting for planet Earth, folks. Real interesting. So here's a video just taken today. So let's see it. You'll see it at the very end. There it is, right there. Okay, we got more. Let's check it out, another one. So here's another one. I'll watch this. There it is. And when you see this picture here, what this is doing, it's not the camera. The camera is being overwhelmed. This is light, folks. This is, truly photons. It's huge, ladies and gentlemen. It's huge. Look at that. I mean, I know everyone's got your opinion, and that's cool. But check that out. Yeah. All right, got one more view. Now, this is the one that really got my attention. Because remember, what you're seeing, this is the sun right here, right? So these are highly charged particles. They're coming off there. We can see that. We can measure this. But check this out. I'm going to stop it right here. Watch. So look at this. We're getting supercharged particles. Now, our sun, I'm just going to show you, it's kind of like right here. So these particles are coming from everywhere. Now watch this. Okay? Look at that, folks. I mean, seriously? Whatever it is, it's really bright. Has some interesting characteristics. And look at this. You see, if someone tries to say it's a lens flare, well, this begins to defy that. This is mass. This is big. I don't know what it is, but it's in our solar system. I'll let it play through one more time in real time so you can see it. So there you go. Heads up, folks. Something's out there. I don't know what it is. It's got strange characteristics to it. All right. If there's ever a time in our planet that we really need to change, listen, I don't know what this is, but I've watched Sechi for a long time, and I have a very, very dear family member who's been watching it much longer. And folks, this is real.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna conclude on that. Anyway, I'll try to leave a link if I can find it, so you can directly corroborate this as well. Understand that SETI and the Stereo H1 satellite is a NASA satellite, and this feed is for the 16th of November 2016. So it's quite a recent feed. Whatever that anomaly is, it's huge. It's enormous. It's you can see it in relation to Mercury, how big it is. And we can only imagine. I did hypothesize in earlier installments that there seems to be a huge two gas giants. In fact, I think I've mentioned it in the science WhatsApp distribution list as well, where I've kind of laid out the structure of this solar system, and I've done it in previous uploads actually, and I'm sure you guys have come across it a few times now, where I've been very specific about what I think makes up this binary system in terms of the celestial bodies within it, of which there's a primary star, which is a proton-neutron star. Then there's another star, which is a brown dwarf star, which is possibly what we're looking at the moment. And it may have other, maybe another gas giant that basically orbits this brown dwarf star, very similar to how the moon orbits the Earth. This brown dwarf star may have a gas giant orbiting it. And we've hypothesized that there's at least two gas giants and maybe another planet, and then comet debris and moons and asteroids, which make up this system. So all in all, it's got two stars, three planets, of which two are gas giants, and then moons, and comet debris and asteroids. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. But this, the conclusion hasn't come to me easily. It's come to me after years and years, quite a few years, all the way back in 2007 up to now, of researching and studying this, and trying to keep up to speed with all of the data that comes in and processing that. And that's a conclusion I've personally come to. Some people just think there's only one star. I disagree with that, and one of the reasons why I do is that the Kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions a star with piercing brightness. Now, if any system were to come into our solar system, we would know about it, and again, we would be directed towards it, either by virtue of the Kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or by virtue of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him. Either way, in both instances, the only reference we have, at least that I know of, when a star is mentioned, is a star of piercing brightness. Now, if this solar system, this binary system, had only one star, and that star happens to be the brown dwarf star, then the brown dwarf star certainly does not have the characteristics that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described this star with, simply because the brown dwarf star doesn't have its own source of light. It has, it's almost like a burnt out coal, like I previously mentioned, right? Which has a glow from inside, but it doesn't shine so bright unless it comes into close proximity to our sun, and then gets a jump start in terms of its fusion within its core. Then you get to see it brighten up for a little while, and then again it dims down again, depending on its distance from either one of the stars. I don't think it gets that close to its primary star anyway, just like we don't get too close to our sun and we maintain an orbit. this brown dwarf star does exactly the same when it orbits the primary star, which is the proton-neutron star, in the Quran referred to as An-Najm al-Thaqib, the star with piercing brightness. So I don't think this particular dwarf star gets that close to it, because the brown dwarf star, the An-Najm al-Thaqib, the primary star, the proton-neutron star, is parked next to our sun, sharing a barycenter with it. This particular brown dwarf star ends up getting in close proximity to our sun, and when it does that, it kind of basically lights up or brightens up a bit, and this is when we get to see it, and its light um, uh, in our atmosphere. An example of which is that video of that individual, that gentleman from Texas in September, who basically pointed out a light source coming from the horizon in the opposite direction of our sun was setting. I think that that was this brown dwarf star, and it's kind of light when it basically gets a kickstart when it enjoys that proximity to our sun. And So, I mean, I certainly have come to a different conclusion from many of the other researchers researching this particular phenomena. Most of them have based it on a single star. I don't, and at least this seems to kind of have a very distinct relationship. At least this narrative, the one that I maintain, has seems to have a distinct correlation with the Hopi tribes and their understanding of two stars. They called it the blue Kachina and the red Kachina, right? And red Kachina, I think, is alluding towards this red dwarf star. The blue Kachina is alluding towards An-Najm al-Thaqib, the neutron-proton star. And historically, they've documented the celestial bodies coming into our system. And from what I understand, I'm not sure which of the two stars, at least not um, off the back of my memory, but one of these stars were the cause, the asbab through which, when we had close proximity to that star, of the two, were the asbab through which they experienced huge upheaval and destruction. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So it's very interesting what's happening. Certainly, we're living in very interesting times, you know, and I think this is going to be a cleanser for the believers, at least. It'll purify us and certainly realign our priorities in terms of our purpose and why we're tarrying our, I guess, reality here on earth and what our purpose is, subhanallah, which is the risal of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and connecting with the wahdaniyat, the oneness of God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having the marifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then living our life according to the wishes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One is compelled, you know. Uh, Submission isn't anything derogatory. Subhanallah. If anything, it liberates the individual who submits himself, and who come to that conclusion without a shadow of a doubt. If he genuinely and sincerely submits himself to, he or she submits themselves to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala and the commands of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, and through shown by the ways of our beloved Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace and blessings be upon him. You'll find in that submission a lot of peace and a lot of harmony, and if anything, one feels liberated through it. Subhanallah. And then going against that, going against the will of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, actually brings about anxiety, uneasiness, discomfort, and suffering once one finds themselves having realigned themselves with the article of faith, the kalima la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, it seems like we're living very interesting times. Seems like the dark forces, and this includes government bodies worldwide, all the major ones, I think they're all colluding together to stage a false extraterrestrial contact, false. Well, it will be a real world war, but not one that's occurred um, um, through natural circumstances, but rather one that was scripted and plotted and schemed, and just so that they can bring about chaos and then their version of order through that chaos. And it, and the economic collapse. And I know I'm not painting a very, very well. I'm painting a sobering picture, and I genuinely don't mean to. I'm not here to create any sort of fear and panic, but these it genuinely seems like this is what's on the horizon, and if it indeed is, it spells some um, major changes in the reality that we've taken for granted so far, and at least in the Muslim Ummah needs to become muhtat. Our responsibility to humanity. We're shepherds, right? Khalafa uh, means a delegated responsibility, not ruling over humanity, but rather protecting, guiding, and bringing about justice, fairness. There's so many aspects to it, and that is nothing but just and fair. And love, subhanAllah, which is at the center of all of this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant me the tawfiq, all of us the tawfiq, to understand our purpose in life. And it's certainly not one that takes from humanity, but rather gives to it. And may we actually rise up to the occasion, with all the demonization, the vilification, and all this neuro-linguistic psychology used against Muslims worldwide, anchoring terms such as terrorism and extremism with a Muslim, which conjures up in the mind's eye of individuals who see Muslims instantly, especially ones with beards and turbans, and the ones dressed in sunnah. A non-Muslim instantly feels that fear and apprehension simply because of the effort being made on them psychologically through mainstream media and other outlets. We have to turn that over on its head, because the onus is on our shoulders to rise up and show them the true Islam, the real Islam, and that's going to happen through us and our responsibility in basically adopting the true teachings of Islam and then letting them shine and do the work and touching the hearts of humanity. Letting them really see Islam, the true Islam. Up until now, what they've seen is, I guess, um, the empty carcass, the shell of Deen, of Islam, through the eyes of a believer. And that's because of who I myself have become, who we have become as an ummah. And it's very unfortunate that we are so far removed from the teachings of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sending the asbab soon, and this is it. We're looking at it, and this is going to purify us. It's going to realign us to the important things in life. Those of us who will get through this, inshallah ta'ala, and hopefully that's the majority of us that actually make it through this, then the world as we know it isn't going to exist. The system of trade isn't going to exist the way we've experienced it so far. We're going to see changes that are going to impact every region of the world. And from my little understanding, it seems that these individuals want to make sure that the impact is um, felt and reverberated throughout the four corners of the earth. Right? And when I say the impact, more specifically the suffering and the destruction, so whether that would be through disease, famine, world war, or the destruction caused by the naturally through this binary system going through and passing through and going back out in its orbit, um, they're counting on that in order to then persuade and lead and misguide humanity into a false spiritual religion. And part of that will be the final phase of their scheming and planning, as I understand it, for the arrival of the man of perdition, the deceiver, the Antichrist, Dajjal, following which Isa alayhi salam, Jesus, may peace be upon him, will arrive and personally, as Muslims believe, will personally kill the Antichrist, Dajjal, may curse be he, um, and lead all of humanity into what we understand to be a golden age for however long Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed it to last. Anyway, sorry guys, again, I guess I've just kind of gone off on a tangent. There's a lot of you who tune in and maybe don't understand the perspective of Islam and Muslims on these events occurring. Now, I'm no scholar by any stretch of imagination. I'm just a very average individual who has benefited from wonderful scholars. SubhanAllah, I've been very, very fortunate. You know, the sort of location I live in, I've benefited from scholars that are just I'm certainly not deserving of. And all I'm doing is, all I have done is maybe learned from them, from their discourses, and I'm almost regurgitating what I've understood from that. So, I mean, don't take my word for it as a gospel. Certainly, it's not, you know, directly from the mouth of a scholar, but it's stuff that I've heard, and I guess what my feeble mind has understood, and from that, you know, I'm basing these kind of uh, well, I'm basing my opinion off the back of that. You know, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive me for the audacity. And really, this certainly belongs in the domain of our scholars, beloved ulama kiram, and for them to maybe navigate through this phenomena and see how it relates to, you know, the Quran and Hadith. But again, my only purpose is to draw their attention so that they can then guide, if this is indeed a real event, then they can maybe guide us through it all, inshallah ta'ala. Anyway, jazakallahu khairan wa ahsanu jazaa for your time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.